YouTube, today we're going to go over the Malamar Sirfetch'd team that I use for Baek's Battles. Let's get started and roll the episode. So why Malamar? Malamar was a Pokemon that was requested a while ago with the Topsy-Turvy, and I always had this idea back in the day of Gen 5 of what Pokemon would be really threatening if the ability Contrary was available. And there was Superior, of course, which was unreleased at the time, and Reshiram, an idea that I had where, what if you could somehow get Contrary and Reshiram for Draco Meteor and Overheat, two moves that would allow you to boost your special attack instead of decreasing it? Seemed pretty insane. And then when I remembered this, I thought, okay, maybe I can't get Contrary off into Reshiram, but I can get Topsy-Turvy off with Malamar, and that is how the team idea started. So how was the team formed? Well, it started off with the idea of Malamar and Reshiram for the Topsy-Turvy. I had two ideas where there was Trick Room and Choice Scarf. The Choice Scarf kind of fell a little bit short because Malamar still wasn't able to outspeed certain Pokemon. I felt like Topsy-Turvy was still going to be really hard to set up anyway. So I felt like give myself a more versatile set of going for the Trick Room with Malamar and make it a bit easier to set up. The next Pokemon I needed was a way to set up Trick Room. So I felt like Porygon2 is just a really bulky Pokemon. It just takes attacks really well, I felt like. And it would be a great Pokemon to set up Trick Room. Also has that Eerie Impulse, which, fun fact, there is positions where you can Eerie Impulse your own Reshiram, or in this case your own Togekiss too, which I discovered later. And then if they focus down to Porygon2 because they see an opportunity to get rid of Porygon2, an annoying Pokemon to get rid of, then you can bring out the Malamar and Topsy-Turvy your Togekiss or your Reshiram with that Eerie Impulse boost already in mind. So that is a little fun thing. And +2 Crit Kiss is definitely a scary Pokemon. But I didn't want Porygon2. I also considered other Pokemon as well to help Porygon2 set up the Trick Room, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted. I considered Incineroar and Rillaboom, but I felt like having the extra dark typing and the fire typing that overlapped with Incineroar, even with the Intimidate as tempting as it was, I felt like it wasn't that good of a fit here. So I knew I needed another way to help get Trick Room up that wasn't Fake Out, and I felt like Togekiss was a good answer. Follow Me with the Togekiss was really nice to prevent taunts, which do hurt the Porygon2, and it's really good against Urshifu, which was a bit of a pain for me. So I felt like Togekiss was a great member and could really threaten Urshifu. And Follow Me, pretty bulky Pokemon. The only problem is that Regieleki plus these Zacians can outspeed and threaten the Togekiss, and then I just gotta hope it's not a Ben Urshifu at that point. But that is a risk that you have to take here. But I felt like Togekiss just rounded out the team overall, so I felt like it was definitely worth the trade-off here. The next two Pokemon were added off an idea I had of what else could I abuse with Topsy-Turvy, because I really want to show off the Topsy-Turvy. That was mainly my goal here with this team. Not to be the most serious team, but to abuse the Topsy-Turvy in fun ways. And I felt like, yes, you could boost the special attack stats of the Reshiram, but what else could I boost? And then I had the idea of Close Combat. It was also another idea back in the day of getting like Contrary plus like Close Combats around, and yeah, I felt like, oh, what could I really accomplish off that? And I felt like I saw two Pokemon. Sirfetch'd was a Pokemon that was interesting to me. I like the fighting type. It helped with like other stuff, other opposing Porygon2, which could be a little bit annoying. I like the damage output against like Urshifu and Incineroar, which I felt like I had a little bit of trouble dealing damage to, even though I really like dealing with Incineroars because they can party shot me and then I could get the Topsy-Turvy off. I felt like just having a way to nuke an Incineroar is still really important, so I felt like Sirfetch'd was actually a pretty nice Pokemon. And then I felt like the idea way I can boost the Topsy-Turvy with Close Combat was Glastrier actually, and Glastrier, absolutely insane Pokemon with its already high stats with the Assault Vest. Imagine this Glastrier, they send in Incineroar to intimidate the Glastrier. I go for Close Combat, don't pick up the KO usually, and I'm usually able to boost up my defenses, and then I Topsy-Turvy that for Glastrier. A +1 defense Glastrier before Dynamax is already a pretty big threat. So that is how the 6 was formed. Alright, let's go over the items, the movesets, and the EV spreads of the team. We have Citrus Berry Malamar up first with the Suction Cups ability with Trick Room, Topsy-Turvy, Foul Play, and Protect. Now, Citrus Berry Malamar, of course, because it is a great item in order for Malamar to preserve itself as long as possible on the field to get the Topsy-Turvy off, especially in patient situations. Suction Cups, I considered Contrary on the Malamar. The thing that I didn't like about Contrary was, even though it's great for Max Phantasm and Max Darkness, of course, that could affect the Malamar, I was unsure about stuff like random Electrowebs and Icy Winds and situations. And if I do boost up my Malamar, if it's like next to Glastrier, for instance, it's a little bit strange weakening my defenses. So I felt like it was a too volatile of an ability. So I decided to go with Suction Cups instead. Infiltrator was only useful in one situation, which was against Substitute Calyrex, which isn't that common of a thing. So I felt like it isn't that great on this team. I felt like Suction Cups can just cover the random roars if there is a possible thing, and yeah, I'd be able to get the Trick Room up. I felt like, you know what, try Suction Cups. I think it's the most consistent ability and I know what it does, and I don't screw myself over potentially. So the moveset Trick Room, of course, to help set up Trick Room. Topsy-Turvy, of course, the star move. Foul Play, since I didn't feel like I was going to be doing damage with Malamar, and Foul Play is nice to do damage to, like, a stab Foul Play does a decent amount to, like, Zacian, and a decent amount to Calyx, Shadow Rider as well. So might as well just have Foul Play. I felt like it was pretty consistent. And then Protect, of course, because we do want to preserve Malamar. EV Spread is just max HP, 172 defense with 84 special defense with an Impish Nature. I wanted to take Behemoth Blades from Zacian's, and that was mainly the thing. I can't really live Play Rough, but if I am facing the standard Zacian with just Fighting Move and Substitute and Behemoth Blade, I'm able to live with the Behemoth Blade. If that is going to come down to it, they did like Regieleki plus like Zacian, for instance. And overall, I wanted a physically defensive Malamar to help with like just in general stuff. I felt like it was better because I had Porygon2 as my special defensive tank, so I might as well just make Malamar a bit more physically defensive, especially against like Dark Urshifu, which could be really scary to the team. So that's what the EV spread is supposed to accomplish. Just a bulky Malamar, have a bit of special defense in case of random stuff as well, just to take attacks and able to preserve itself so I can get the Trick Room off and hopefully Topsy-Turvy as well in a lot of cases. Next up, we got a Eviolite Porygon2 with the download ability with Ice Beam, Eerie Impulse, Trick Room, Recover. I've used this Porygon2 before on the Bronzong Kyogre team, and it's just a very simple Porygon2, just a bulky Pokemon that's supposed to set up. Eviolite, of course, boosts his defenses even further since it's not a fully evolved Pokemon. Download, it actually works this time since I have Ice Beam as a damage coverage option, so having that download boost for Ice Beam is pretty nice. And I could run Analytics still, but I do prefer download in most cases, as I usually try to get Trick Room up with this team anyway, so I felt like it just wasn't really worth having the analytic boost. The Eerie Impulse, of course, to help set up Trick Room, and it allows me to, like, you know, neuter some threats of like Celesteela and any other big special attackers like the Shadow Rider Calyx. And of course, I could go for the Eerie Impulse on myself, and if Porygon2 goes down, I could get the Topsy-Turvy off. So that was the reason why I had Eerie Impulse. It's a good consistent move for outside of like the Topsy-Turvy stuff, and it could potentially set up Topsy-Turvy stuff as well. So might as well just take advantage of it. Trick Room and Recover, pretty standard. Porygon2 just supposed to sit there on the field, get Trick Room up, and that's basically the goal right there. And then the EV spread, as I mentioned before, it's just a really bulky Porygon2 set. That was a adjusted Pikalytic spread, and I just ended up going with a Sassy Nature. And I do have a lot of physical defense on this Porygon2 because I don't need the special defense investment since I have Eerie Impulse, but I do still want some special defense investment, especially in a lead situation where I'm not able to get the Eerie Impulses off. And that's why I have a lot in defense, but I still have some in special defense to take like spread moves like Heat Wave, for instance, from Charizard in the Sun, which I think is pretty viable. Kyogre Water Spout, of course. So still having some special defense is pretty important, and that's what the spread accomplishes. So we have Glastrier up next with the Assault Vest, Chilling Aid for the ability with Icicle Crash, the Close Combat, Heavy Slam, and High Horsepower. Pretty standard Glastrier all around. It was just an idea with Topsy-Turvy how a lot of players would approach the Glastrier with Incineroar, Parting Shot it out in order to, you know, keep the Glastrier from being that much of a threat, fearing the weakness policy. Flare-Blitz doesn't do too much, and then potentially getting a Topsy-Turvy with Malamar to increase the Glastrier stats instead of the decreases, and then with Dynamax further boost the Glastrier. So that was the idea. We have a pretty standard Assault Vest Glastrier. It does allow me to run all the coverage moves I want and increase the special defense already, which is pretty high already, but yeah, it's even further, especially with the boost from the Topsy-Turvy Close Combats potentially, and of course the Max Quakes from the High Horsepower. So pretty standard Glastrier, Icicle Crash, Close Combat, Heavy Slam, and High Horsepower. The coverage, of course, really just standard Glastrier, best moveset for a 4-attack Glastrier. And then the EV spread is very simple, max HP, 196 attack with a Brave Nature, and 60 special defense, just as leftover to take advantage of the Assault Vest points. And you already have a pretty high attack stat, and you're probably going to get some boost on top of that. Just makes this Pokemon absolutely incredible. Just really insane Pokemon with Dynamax, and oh boy, this Ice type just goes insane. Alright, next we got Reshiram with the Safety Goggles item with Turboblaze for the ability with Heat Wave, Draco Meteor, Overheat, and Protect. With this Pokemon having two moves that are really powerful that decrease its special attack by 2 stages, I felt Reshiram with Topsy-Turvy would go absolutely insane. If this Pokemon could get Contrary 2, that would have been amazing, but why not just Topsy-Turvy if we can't get the Contrary? So after the Reshiram Safety Goggles, I felt like I had some other item choices. I had leftovers when I had the Rillaboom version of this team, and I had Shuckaberry experimentation for a while, but sometimes the Shuckaberry just wouldn't activate, and I felt like Amoonguss was pretty annoying because of the fact that it is a pretty good answer in Trick Room. and I don't exactly have the best answers to Amoonguss. So I felt like safety goggles was a pretty consistent item that would definitely be useful on the team. So I had the safety goggles. And then the Draco Meteor and Overheat, of course, is for the power. It does a lot of damage initially, and then Malamar can use it to boost up the Reshiram with the Topsy-Turvy, and then Heat Wave for the spread damage. Absolutely incredible. It also helps that Draco Meteor and Overheat have really powerful max damage, especially with the a little bit of extra power, 140 compared to the 130 in usual max attacks. It is really nice. And then Protect, of course, to preserve the Reshiram. The EV spread just made him want to be bulky, since I am boosting my special attack anyway. Don't need all the special attack investments, so felt like I would put into bulk. So I put into max HP. I had a bit of special defense because Reshiram has a really high special defense already. 120 is actually really solid. So I just did a little bit of special defense. I wanted more defense to take on Zacian, so that is what I ended up going for. And then 76 modest to get an extra stat point, which is always useful because it helps out with the initial damage from Draco Meteor and Overheat. So that is the Reshiram spread. Able to do a lot of with the Topsy-Turvy Malamar, and it was absolutely fun to use. So next we have Sirfetch'd with the Leek item with Scrappy for the ability with Close Combat, Leaf Blade, Brave Bird, and Protect. Sirfetch'd is definitely the interesting Pokemon here, and I do think it is probably the most replaceable too, but I'll get into that after I go over the set. Sirfetch'd was interesting to me. I wanted something with Close Combat, and this was before I realized Glastrier. I was going through Pokemon with Close Combat, and Sirfetch'd caught my eye. It was a pretty interesting Pokemon. It's cool under Trick Room. I felt like, ooh, I could Close Combat and go for the Topsy-Turvy, and this thing can do damage to Incineroar, which I felt like I had problems previously using the Reshiram because I have to be boosted with the Reshiram, and that means I have to get the Topsy-Turvy off. So sometimes like it would always be that situation where I wouldn't be able to bring Malamar in certain games. So I wanted a backup answer, and that's why I brought the Sirfetch'd. I felt like it fulfilled that role pretty nicely. I also really like the Leaf Blade to do damage to stuff like Gastrodon, which can be a little bit annoying to the team as well. So I really did like the idea of Sirfetch'd. The Leek item gives it a +2 crit ratio, which means its attacks already have a 50% chance to crit. And Leaf Blade is guaranteed to crit if I am not mistaken. So this Sirfetch'd, absolutely crazy. And I felt like Leek item was probably the best. I did have room for like Life Orb potentially, but I decided, you know what? Why not try the Leek item? Getting the crits would be amazing with the defense machine. And we'll see if it works. So that was my goal right here. With the Scrappy ability, of course, I do like Scrappy, prevents Intimidate, as well as hitting the Ghost types with Close Combat is actually pretty cool. And then the moveset Close Combat, Leaf Blade, Brave Bird, and Protect. So I think the only thing I would change would be Brave Bird to dual Wing Beats, because it might be better against Urshifu, as Brave Bird I never really used. I don't think I ever really used Brave Bird. I only used it for like potential Amoongusses, and it didn't even really matter too much because I had Reshiram and Glastrier that usually was doing the damage to Amoonguss. So I felt like Brave Bird was definitely not necessary. It's probably the move that could be changed the most here. But overall, I like Close Combat, and I like Leaf Blade and Protect, of course, because it is to preserve the Pokemon, especially since it is one of my heavy damage dealers outside of the Topsy-Turvy strategy, which might not always be able to go off. And then the EV spread, pretty simple. Max HP, 196 attack with a Brave Nature, and then 60 into special defense. That means a +1 stat point into the attack. Already has a pretty high attack stat and can get intimidated, so I can move a little into the special defense, which is a little bit weaker. And yeah, Sirfetch'd was able to do a lot of damage. Now, Sirfetch'd is definitely the Pokemon that can be replaced the most. The reason I say this, it wasn't the most core aspect. I didn't really get the Close Combat and Topsy-Turvys off, unfortunately. And I felt like this team also does struggle against like stuff that can prevent a Trick Room. There's actually a few ways that can prevent getting Trick Room up, such as Helping Hand plus Kyogre Water Spout, which means I usually have to Dynamax like the Togekiss immediately for the game plan. And that's not great because I'm taking so much damage with Togekiss. I'm usually losing like Porygon, or I'm sacking a Pokemon. It just is a little bit of a mess. So I do think that in order to save that matchup, I do think it can be better to like replace the Sirfetch'd for something that can help against Kyogre and maybe help out against Groudon teams, because Groudon teams, the Sun teams, were a little bit annoying to face. So I think having something more for weather control would be nice on the team. But Sirfetch'd was absolutely fun and did a lot of work when I did bring it, and did do a lot of damage. So I was pretty happy about this Pokemon. I would use it on a more initially competitive team than this more fun one, but yeah, Sirfetch'd was actually able to do a lot of work. Final Pokemon is the Togekiss with the Scope Lens, Super Luck, Air Slash, Dazzling Gleam, Heat Wave, Follow Me. Pretty standard Togekiss. I think Crit Kiss is absolutely insane. There are some times where Incineroars go for Snarls and Parting Shots against Togekiss, and it just doesn't care because they will get a 50% chance to just crit the opponent, and it goes absolutely insane. And sometimes there'll be Porygon2s that Eerie Impulse it, and I can also do that too, and then do the Topsy-Turvy off. But mainly this thing is supposed to be Follow Me to help out the Trick Room almost guaranteed. I also really like the offensive pressure that Togekiss can have potentially. And yeah, it just helps against Urshifu, which is really important. So I like the Scope Lens Super Luck. I could have went with a bulkier Togekiss, of course, like a Berry set. I could have even ran Focus Sash if I wanted to. And Focus Sash doesn't seem like a bad option realistically, but I wanted some kind of offensive pressure if I needed it for the lead and to do decent damage, especially if I'm not able to have Trick Room. So that was the goal with the Scope Lens. I do think you could mess around with like a different Togekiss, of course, but I felt like this one was something I want to try out too, especially if I could get the Eerie Impulse or they go passive against the Togekiss leads. I try to stall out Trick Room. I could punish it with a Togekiss that could do a massive amount of work with the Topsy-Turvy. So Air Slash, Dazzling Gleam, Heat Wave, Follow Me. I felt like Heat Wave was just nice. That, of course, Air Slash, Dazzling Gleam for coverage, Follow Me for the redirection. And Heat Wave, I felt like it was just nice to have a backup against like stuff like Ferrothorn. I felt like hitting Zacians to break a sub could be really important in passive situations. Like if they sub up against Porygon2 Togekiss, which is definitely a possibility, I think Heat Wave just to break the sub is really nice. They don't go for the Behemoth Blade. And then the EV spread, it's about bulk. I want to take attacks, 244 HP, 44 defense, 76 special attack, 140 special defense, and 4 speed. I knew I wanted a lot of HP. That was the goal. I have a 244 because of the fact that this is to reduce like sand damage from max rockfall, for instance, instead of having the max HP, which would be 1 more HP to the recoil. And then I have a lot of special defense. This was for Eliki. I don't know the exact calcs on the Eliki actually, which I had to double check because it depends, because a lot of Eliki's been running Life Orb recently, so it might not be the best idea because I don't think Togekiss lives the Thunderbolts. It might live Volt Switches, but I'm not exactly too sure. I knew I wanted some offense, so I did have some 76 Modest for a stat point, and then I could have used a bit more in defense, especially since I didn't have Intimidate, but Togekiss is just a naturally bulky Pokemon. I feel like it could get away with stuff. I think you could even go the Focus Sash route, as I mentioned before. I think Focus Sash isn't even a bad idea for the Togekiss, but it really just depends. I wanted to crit pressure just in case I did have the Dynamax Togekiss in certain games, and I definitely did Dynamax Togekiss a few games in practice. So I think overall, definitely the set that can be changed. I think Togekiss and Sirfetch'd are definitely the Pokemon that definitely have the room to be changed quite a bit. I really like Glastrier though on the team. I like the Reshiram. I like Malamar. P2 maybe can be changed. There are definitely some ways to get the Topsy-Turvy off, but I felt like those 4 Pokemon were really solid. Togekiss, of course, was really helpful too, and maybe just the set can be changed a bit. I really did like Togekiss on the team. Sirfetch'd, I liked it too. It just maybe didn't help as much as I wanted to with some of the really bad matchups I think with this team has, but overall really fun team regardless. I had a lot of fun trying out some of these sets. I just wish I could get more Topsy-Turvy off other than just on the Reshiram and my opponent's Dynamaxes. So how to use the team and what are the common leads with this team? So I'd say overall, of course, one of the main strategies is usually just to go for the Topsy-Turvy if you can get it off with a Reshiram or Glastrier, any of those Pokemon. I'd say that is the main goal, of course, but you could usually just set up for a Trick Room sweep, usually with Sirfetch'd and Glastrier, which actually do really a good amount of damage inside of Trick Room and can usually just pick up knockouts pretty quickly. So that is another option. Otherwise, you're just trying to set up for the Reshiram usually with the Topsy-Turvy. It's probably the most consistent Topsy-Turvy you can get off, but of course Glastrier and Sirfetch'd, if you do find that opening, can be a thing before you Dynamax, and then you can boost up even further with your max moves. It's pretty insane what you can do with it. Common leads I'd say with the team, I'd say Porygon2 plus Togekiss or Malamar plus Togekiss are probably the most consistent leads to set up Trick Room depending on the situation. I usually will lead Porygon2 plus Togekiss if I can't really set up Trick Room with Malamar. If it's like against a Kyurem, for instance, I will try out the Porygon2 plus Togekiss mode and go for the Follow Me and Trick Room, and then hopefully I'll be able to set up something like Glastrier or Sirfetch'd usually. And then afterward, I would say I could also lead the Togekiss Malamar into situations where Malamar's not really as threatened, and then get in Reshiram and start going for the Topsy-Turvy stuff, or even Glastrier or Sirfetch'd, but that's usually the way. And then I'd say I also will lead sometimes Malamar plus Porygon2 because of the fact that if I am not sure I'm able to get Trick Room up guaranteed with like Togekiss, I have that mind game with Malamar and Porygon2 and having the Malamar out on the field. So it's pretty nice in general because if they go for like a weakness policy setup, I could Trick Room with Porygon2, usually able to have Trick Room against like most of the weakness policy setups, and then you can go for the Topsy-Turvy into the opponent's play, which I was actually able to get quite a few times, and it really does catch them off guard. So that is a different option you can consider. And then usually maybe otherwise the other leads, I'd say it depends on if you really can set up Trick Room guaranteed safe. You have to go for the offense. you will probably lead like Glastrier or Reshiram just to get like Dynamax moves potentially turn 1. I sometimes Dynamax the Togekiss in situations as well, in case like it's a matchup where I don't think I can get Trick 'em up pretty safely. And yeah, that is usually how I would lead with the team. It's just mainly trying to set up that Trick Room as much as possible, because this team really depends on Trick Room most of the time, and then playing out through there. And that is the end of the episode. I hope you all enjoyed the thought process of what went behind the Malamar team. It was a more of a fun team. It's definitely not the most solid team, but there were some fun instances where Topsy-Turvy really came into play. It really did work well with the Reshiram. Wasn't able to get it off with the other Pokemon, but maybe in other situations I can. Very situational, but it was a fun tech to just display. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, try out the team. You have 2 weeks to grab the team with the rental code on your screen before it expires. It's been available in the description, and of course leave a like down below, leave a comment down below. It really does help out. But thank you all for tuning in. Have a great day, people, and until we bow again, I'll catch y'all later.